Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Everyone, everyone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Everyone,
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Radha Vallabha Radha Vallabha Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra.
Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath.
Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Jostatara Satasi Siman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinde Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaur Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Kadadha Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hare Devo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please tell me what verse number is up. Okay. So here's the seventh verse, and then we'll all read the eighth verse together. The great sage Dadiji said, "Just to hear from you about religious principles, I refuse to offer my body at your request. Now, although my body is extremely dear to me, I must give it up for your purposes. I must give it up for your better purposes, since I know that it will leave me today or tomorrow." Okay, who can remember something of what I read? Raise your hand. Very difficult question. But just to make it a little easier for you, I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to ask you the very same question. The great sage Dadachi said, "Just to hear from you about religious principles, I refuse to offer my body at your request. Now, although my body is extremely dear to me, I must give it up. I must give it up for your better purposes, since I know that it will leave me today or tomorrow." Please tell me something that you remember, but raise your hand. I may have to read it a third time. Everyone's so shy today. But I'm going to wait. Please tell me something you remember. Thank you, but just wait one moment. Just wait one. I like to call on the young ones first, but I want to see if but that makes it too easy for the older ones, because the younger ones get everything. Yes?
So it's about the body. It says the body is going to leave today or tomorrow anyway, so I might give it up for a better purpose.
For a better purpose. And what was another part of what I read? Yes. Yes, my body is dear to me, but I should give it up for a better purpose. And still another part. Yes. Yes. Yes, that's the other part. That he refused first because he wanted to hear religious principles. He explained that because just before, in the previous verses, Lord Vishnu had told the demigods the way out of their distress. And it was something very extreme, because the demigods, the devatas, were afraid of Vritrashura. And he told them a very extreme way out of their distress. And that extreme way is you beg from the Dichi Muni, who's very liberal. Liberal means Odarj, it means generous. He's so generous. And what should you beg from him? You should beg from him his very body. Because his body is powerful, so powerful. And then Vishwakarma will make a weapon from that body, which is the Vajra, Indra's thunderbolt. And with that thunderbolt, Vritrashura will be able to be killed. So it's a wonderful plan. It comes from Lord Vishnu himself. But the one difficulty is they have to beg the Dichi Muni for his own body, which is so extreme. Because, as he said, everyone is attached to their own bodies. And then we become further attached to the things extended from our body, such as family and possessions. So if we're driving in our car, even though our car doesn't have anything to do with us, if another car bangs into it, we get out and say, "You hit me," and that's called a hun car. Somebody should laugh. which is carrying the request of Vishnu. So dedicated, and Prabhupada's purport, especially the ending, was so strong yesterday. Does anyone remember? Anyone who was here remember what that was? I mean, that's a really hard question. I mean, asking what you just heard is a hard question, but remembering something yesterday, oh my. Does anyone remember? Yes.
Sacrifice for higher purposes.
Yeah. An elevated, learned, exalted person. Prabhupada was calling on everyone to sacrifice for the higher purpose of spreading Krishna consciousness. And that same theme, and he did it in a very strong and, I would say, dramatic way. And this verse and Prabhupada's purport is going to carry that theme forward. So we were reading the last line, and I became somewhat distracted by that word sochaha, pitiable, instead of even lamentable. Don't lament, na sochati, na kankshati. So someone he's going to say is pitiable. And then stavarar, by the immobile creatures. Does anyone know a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita that has the word stavarar? Stavaram, you know? Does anyone know? Stavarar, nadeki taramurti, savatsa, Ishtadeva sporti. The one who can see his Ishtadeva, his Lord, in the movable and immovable things. This is a perfection of consciousness. This is the way a devotee actually sees. Yomam pashyati sarvatra, from one who sees me everywhere, Krishna says, and sees everything in me. That's a perfection. Really, it's one of premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena, one whose eyes are smeared with a salve, the ointment, the collyrium, the kajal of love. He can see Krishna everywhere and everything. But this meaning is the same word of stavaram, of the immovable living entities, is the same, but the meaning is going to be quite different. And then the final word is api, even. So here's the translation. Please listen carefully, because you know what I'm going to ask as soon as I finish it. O demigods. Okay, but first I should read it. I thought you were remembering what I said, and I was appreciating it. O demigods. I caught you again. First I'm going to read it. O demigods. I caught you again. But I said it in that tone of voice, you know, that you want everyone to repeat it. But don't. Yet. O demigods. Yeah, I caught you again. You ready? To just listen, okay? Okay. O demigods. Okay. O demigods, one who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering. One who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering and does not sacrifice his impermanent body for the higher causes of religious principles or eternal glory is certainly pitied even by the immovable beings. Now it's time when I say, "Oh demigods," and you can, ready? O demigods, one who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering and does not sacrifice his impermanent body for the higher causes of religious principles or eternal glory is certainly pitied, even by the immovable beings. Okay, what do you remember from that? Please raise your hand. Did anything strike you from the verse? About the verse? Yes.
So no compassion for
It's
human-
easier to remember when you're looking at it.
no
Or easier, anyway.
No compassion for humanity in its suffering. So talking about Vaishnava, because if Vaishnava is
Wait, not a purport. But you remembered no compassion for a living being and their suffering. And what was the extreme thing he said about people who have no compassion for the suffering of others? Pitied by immovable living entities. Now, what's one clear difference or a general difference between a movable living entity and an immovable living entity? Because it's a little bit of a tricky question. I'll answer it myself. That a living entity who is movable, who's moving, who's able to move, has higher consciousness, more consciousness than a living entity who's not able to move. So even a living entity who is unable to move, who doesn't have high consciousness, who has low consciousness, little insignificant consciousness, barely conscious of anything, that living entity with his small consciousness pities, says this person is so unfortunate, who doesn't deal with or doesn't have compassion for those who are suffering. What to speak of a person who has developed consciousness? What to speak of a human being who can move, who can control so many things, who can do so many things due to his intelligence and developed consciousness? If he doesn't have compassion for the suffering of others, what is he? Even a person, how does a person like the Ditchi, who's elevated in consciousness, or how does a person any person, as Prabhu said, a Vaishnava, how does he see such people? Terribly. They're really unfortunate. Pitiable means unfortunate. Extremely unfortunate. So in that mood of seeing the unfortunateness, the great unfortunateness of today's human society, Prabhupada is going to explain this verse. So please listen very carefully. In this regard, a very exalted example, an example of someone ready to sacrifice for the benefit of humanity. In this regard, a very exalted example was set by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Concerning Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, 34th verse, Tyaktva sudishtyaja surepchita rajalakshmim dharmishta arya vachasa yadagra aranyam maya mrigam dayita epsitam anvadhavad vande mahapurusha te chararavindam. We offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord, upon whom one should always meditate. Now that in and of itself is sufficient to think about and apply to one's life and what to speak of, give a class on it. To that Supreme Lord, one should always meditate. And to that Supreme Lord upon who we should always meditate, one should he's offering his respectful obeisance. Continues describing, this verse is describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We should always meditate upon him. In so many different ways we should meditate upon him. He left his household life leaving aside his eternal consort, who even the denizens of heaven adore. He went into the forest to deliver the fallen souls who are put into illusion by material energy. So this verse is described by Srila Sridhar Swami as describing Lord Ramachandra, and here the Acharyas very aptly describe this verse as describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That he left his household life, which was so comfortable for him, and he left aside his eternal consort. And why did he do this? To deliver the fallen souls. He went to the forest to deliver the fallen souls of this world, because they are put into illusion. They cannot see things accurately. And that not seeing things accurately or properly or seeing things incorrectly is the cause of their suffering. So that's the basic point. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed a great austerity and took on austerity himself to help the fallen souls of Kali Yuga. That's the basic idea. So Prabhupada continues. To accept sannyas means to commit civil suicide. So what does that mean? That's how we first learn when from Prabhupada about what sannyas means. Civil suicide. What does that mean? Please raise your hand. Yes.
No civil identity, no bank account, no house, no possession.
Yes. No relationship with the outside world. The outside world meaning no responsibility in the world of society. But that doesn't mean irresponsible. But one cuts off the meaning of sannyas here, and this was how we learned it, that one has cut off one's relationship with society and all one's societal responsibilities for the purpose of taking full responsibility for one's own spiritual advancement, for that focus, and also for the purpose of helping others. So it's not irresponsible at all, but no social responsibility, but full spiritual responsibility. And that's why it's called civil suicide, as if for the purpose of society you no longer exist. But I found this purport very, very strong and very powerful and very challenging too. But sannyas, Prabhupada continues, is compulsory, mandatory, must be done for at least every brahmana, every first-class human being. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a very young and beautiful wife and a very affectionate mother. Indeed, the affectionate dealings of his family members were so pleasing that even the demigods could not expect such happiness at home. And yet, he renounced it. He committed civil suicide. He gave up all responsibility in dealing with family for the purpose of helping others. For the purpose, nevertheless, for the deliverance of all fallen souls of the world, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and left home when he was only 24 years old. He lived a very strict life as a sannyasi, refusing all bodily comforts. Similarly, so he's describing Mahaprabhu, and Prabhupada in his purport started describing both Mahaprabhu and his followers, the 6 Goswamis. They were also so similar in this way. And then Prabhupada moves from describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's austerity to help others. He describes the austerity of the 6 Goswamis to help others. Srinivasacharya says, Chak Fatonam Ashesha Mandalapati Srenim Saratuchavat. Tuchavat means insignificant. And Mandalapati means a leader of society, a protector of society. Bhutvadina. And why did they give up? They were in such high positions, Prabhupada will explain. And why did they give up their high positions? They were ministers. As we know that Nawab Hussain Shah, who was an important historical figure in Bengal, he was a slave first, and he became the leader of a rebellion against the government. And because in Chaitanya Charitamrita we hear how he was a servant as a boy, a slave servant under Subudhi Roy. But later he became the leader of all of Bengal. So this is history. And the way that history paints it is that he very much supported, he was very liberal and supported the culture and things like that. But we understand that he wasn't quite a saint. He was quite the murderer and plunderer also. But in any case, Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they were ministers. They were ruling the country while he was plundering and going to war. And as Prabhupada said, watching dancing girls. And they were ruling the country while he was doing these things. So they were so powerful. So why did they give up their powerful position as Mandalapati? It is because Bhutvadina Ganeshako Karunaya, out of their mercy for the fallen, they adopted Kopina Kanta Asrito. They adopted the dress and the position of mendicants, of beggars, practically speaking, with no possessions. They gave up position to have no possessions. So Prabhupada describes further, these Goswamis left their very comfortable lives as ministers, zamindars. You have to be very quiet. Hey, boys. Okay, thank you. They left their very comfortable lives as ministers, zamindars, and learned scholars and joined Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, just to show mercy to the fallen souls of the world. Dina Ganesha Ko Karunaya. Accepting very humble lives as mendicants, beggars, wearing no more than loincloths and torn quilts, Kopina Kanta. They lived in Vrindavan and followed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order to excavate Vrindavan's lost glories. Now here, the pressure comes to us in this final paragraph of Prabhupada's purport. Similarly, everyone else with a materially comfortable condition in this world should join the Krishna consciousness movement to elevate the fallen souls. The words Bhuta Dayaya and Maya Mrigam Dayita Epsitam, from two different verses, from two different verses, and Dina Ganeshako Karunaya all convey the same sense of helping others. These are very significant words for those interested in elevating human society to a proper understanding of life. One should join the Krishna consciousness movement, following the examples of such great personalities as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the six Goswamis, and before them, the great sage Dadichi. Instead of wasting one's life for temporary bodily comforts, one should always be prepared to give up one's life for better causes. After all, the body will be destroyed. Therefore, one should sacrifice it for the glory of distributing religious principles throughout the world. Any questions? Does anyone remember anything from the purport? Suddenly I have amnesia and I can't remember anything. Okay, raise your hand if you could tell me something what Prabhupada said from the purport. Yes, Aniruddha Prabhu.
Prabhupada mentions that sannyas is mandatory.
Mandatory.
Yeah. And yet, and we said the example of the Swamis, how they gave up everything for the mission of Lord Chaitanya.
Yes.
But is it necessary for us, especially we're predominantly a household community?
Okay.
So,
Okay. Can we just hold that for a moment and just what do we remember from the?
oh, you asked.
Yes, I did. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Everyone should live material comforts and join Krishna consciousness.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? I don't think any of the Matajis are going to remember anything about sannyas. And I don't think the men are either. Anyone remember anything? What's the essence of what Prabhupada is saying? Yes? Yeah. And speak on that a little bit.
Jivadaya has been emphasized.
Yes. And what does Jivadaya mean?
Like compassion for the fallen soul.
Yeah. Yes. And remember this is an explanation of what the Dichi Muni has just said, that if you're not compassionate to the suffering of fallen souls, or rather compassion for those who are suffering, even someone who has just a little bit of consciousness, even someone who is not able to move, but they have just the smallest amount of consciousness, such a person who has no compassion is pitiable. What does pitiable mean without Googling it?
Unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. And worthy of what? Or mercy. They're in a very, very unfortunate condition. So Prabhupada is challenging us here to understand the situation in the world. Now, someone could say or would say that there's so many things one could say, but one is that the world is not in an unfortunate situation. But from the viewpoint of spiritual life, and in fact there's so many statistics that people can point out to, that people live longer nowadays. They'll say that the healthcare system is so much better than previously, and the educational system is better. And of course these points can be debated, but aside from that, what is the purpose of life? Seen from the point of view of eternity, how well is contemporary civilization doing? And as we are in the midst of contemporary material civilization, and we all are born into this contemporary civilization, and we all want to be materially successful, it's important to remember how things are seen from a person's point of view who has actual consciousness, not like an immovable living entity, but someone who is conscious. Conscious means aware. Aware of what? Aware of spiritual truth. Just like a child, when they look at something, or someone who has less consciousness than a child, so a little insect looks at something, or a dog, he sees in one way, and then according to the body that one possesses, one sees in a different way. So an adult sees differently than a child, and even a 15-year-old sees differently than a 7-year-old, and even a 20-year-old sees differently than a 15-year-old, and on, and a 30-year-old sees differently than a 20-year-old. And actually, if you look at developmental psychology, you understand that more or less every 10 years, your consciousness comes to if you live a proper life, to a more conscious awareness. And if we look back upon how we thought 10 years ago, mostly, and what we thought was really important 10 years ago, no matter how old we are, we'll probably see that we saw in a very immature and incomplete way just 10 years ago. Because our consciousness has grown, it's matured, we learn from experience. That's the basis of AI, artificial intelligence. It subsumes all its experiences and increases it. So we have very, very good solar energy intelligence that should be increasing. And when someone has really developed this consciousness to see that in every living entity there's a soul, Pandita Samadarshana, and therefore he doesn't disrespect anyone, whether the anyone is in the body of a mouse or an ant or a human being or a president or prime minister or a king or a wealthy person or a poor person. Respect to all living entities, and to actually help, be in the mood of assisting all living entities, that is Jivadaya. To really be in a mood of how can I serve? How can I serve who? How can I serve every living entity? So when one has that kind of consciousness, that's really Vaishnava consciousness. Because he feels the pain of others. That's called compassion. And that's why Prabhupada created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He once said in a letter that without preaching, the institution becomes rubbish. He used a very, very hard word. Rubbish means garbage, useless, thrown away. So he wanted this movement to be an expanding movement, a preaching movement. And there's two reasons for that. One is it's good for others, but also to be compassionate to others is good for ourselves. For two reasons. One is, as one devotee who's passed away, an elderly Bengali gentleman who used to stay in Vrindavan, he used to say, "I'm the worst kind of fish, a selfish." And no one respects a person who is selfish. And on the other hand, someone who is generous, who is beneficent, who is charitable, gains respect even in material society. Because everyone knows that. And it doesn't really even feel good to be selfish. And that's what lack of instruction, a lack of spiritual instruction, lack of good guidance does to contemporary civilization. Because people aren't satisfied. And they think, according to the, I would say, the propaganda and the advertising and even the education, the reason why I'm not satisfied is because I don't have enough for myself. So I become more and more selfish because I have to take care of myself. But no one really knows who their self even is. And therefore their attempt for happiness by just being more and more selfishly oriented causes them more and more loneliness and more unhappiness. Deeper and deeper. And on the other hand, giving to others, that actually brings satisfaction. So that's just one side. It makes us happy. But also in Krishna consciousness, when we are kind to other living entities, Krishna is so pleased because the living entities, aham bijapada pita, that Krishna is the, he says he's the father of all living entities, everyone's father. And naturally, if you want to please the father, you take care of the brothers and sisters in that way, and that evokes the pleasure of the parents. And this wasn't exactly, in this direction wasn't exactly how I was planning to speak. But, and that's why Prabhupada said that cooperation, if you want to please me, because when in Prabhupada's last days, they asked him, well, he was in Vrindavan, should we ask all the devotees to come? And Prabhupada was very ill. And because they love you, Prabhupada, everyone will come and see you. And Prabhupada replied, the test of how much you love me will be how much you cooperate after I leave. And that's a very difficult thing to do, in Kali Yuga especially, cooperation. Why? Because you have to be so humble and tolerant to cooperate. And everyone in Kali Yuga, of course, thinks they know a lot. Well, I was about to say everything, but yeah, so cooperation is one of the most difficult things to do. But it's, and I heard Prabhupada even say this in Hawaii one time. He said that the forces of evil or bad, or, the people, and he was speaking about the people who make their money through slaughterhouses and through intoxication and cigarettes and illicit sex and gambling, the casinos and everything like that. They're very powerful in this world. And Prabhupada's point at that time is if we want to actually affect the world, and his vision was really like that. He wanted to change the world. It was, we usually, we think in a small way, but he was thinking so big. He actually wanted to change the world. And he actually trusted that he was putting in motion something, his International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that had the capacity to change the world, to challenge materialistic civilization. And if you look at the actual projects that he pushed, such as the Bhaktivedanta Institute, he was challenging materialistic science because it breeds atheism. And the science, and when we read the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, we see that, raise your hand if you've read the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam and the universe, what the universe looks like. Raise your hand if you've read that. Well, you have something to look forward to. It's quite amazing. But it's not the way we've been trained to see. But yet, if you see in the way that contemporary science teaches us, if we learn that vision, in the words of one scientist, we live alone in a lonely universe, a dark and lonely universe, distress that has no purpose. And when there's no, I am really drifting, excuse me, but I'm getting excited also. Because if there's no purpose to life, and you're just here and you live and you're just made of atoms and molecules and material elements and you have no true existence yourself, raise a hand if you don't truly exist. See, it's obvious, because how could you say you don't exist and raise your hand to prove it? Because you have to exist to raise your hand to say that you don't exist. But then there's no good and bad. There's no morality even. And that's the way current civilization, and Prabhupada would generally say so-called civilization, is going. There's no good and bad. They call that postmodernism if you study these things, that everything is a temporary construct. There's no real good or bad in the world. Golly gee, I mean, it's a dangerous world to live like that, and that's how animals live, and that's what contemporary civilization is coming to. When, if you want to be in a bad mood and read the current news, well, that's one way to get in a bad mood. If you want to get in a good mood, just look at Jagannath Baldev Subhadra. If you want to get in a bad mood, you read the news, and there's, or you get desperate to see that they're always finding mass graves of people where they've just been killed, old people, young people, women, children, killed and just buried somewhere, hidden. It's just, it's animalistic. It's animalistic. And then you we bring up these children and putting them into this world. It's frightening for the parents who can see. So when a person has the consciousness, develop consciousness to actually see what's going on in this world, that we're not advancing just because we have faster computers, we have better mobile phones, we can completely communicate continuously with anyone in the world at any time. What is the metric? How do you measure advancement, whether we're doing better or not as a civilization? Do you measure it by megabytes or gigabytes or what's the one above that called? Terabytes. Because one time I was talking to my son many years ago, and I said, I said megabytes, gigabytes, trigabytes, and he just went. What's above a terabyte? Huh? Betabyte? It's bitter. It's bitter is not better. But more and more and more and bigger and the Wi-Fi 5, what's 5 and then what's it? 5G, 6G, never mind what no one has any idea what it's doing to people's consciousness of the planets. But if you live near a mobile phone tower, you're going to get headaches. And what is it? But everyone is so hypnotized and intoxicated by the gadgets and distracted by these type of things. And we're going from 5G to 7G and onward. And no one is, and then you wear those, what are they called? Yeah, and then and meta universes, and you can have your own universe. Raise your hand if you'd like to have your own universe. Well, in one sense, everyone does have their own universe because we all live in a bubble. This is the curse of being away from Krishna. We live in this bubble in which we're the central figure, and everyone else has just a small part in their business service. And as I often find myself saying, we live in our own universe, and we want to be served, and we're the central person in that universe, but the only problem is we can't convince anyone else that we're the central person in our own universe. Especially our children, until they get older and more mature. Of course, not these gems. Anyway, it's a world that from the vision of a person who actually sees what's going on, their hearts melt or break with compassion, and they want to help, and they have the vision, the ability to help. And that's what Chaitanya Nitai and their servants, they want to say, let's please Please chant Hare Krishna. It sounds so simple, and it is easy in effect. And the kirtans are so attractive, and they immediately put Krishna in the universe of our consciousness. And it immediately brings such a wonderful effect to the consciousness. It's so uplifting. Confirmed. It's so uplifting, and Sisi Gonatai traveled all over Navadvip, and Prabhupada traveled all over the world, and Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu also traveled all over Bharatama. I'm just telling people to please chant Hare Krishna, please chant the holy names of the Lord. Bring spiritual consciousness. Bring something of that other realm, the holy names, into the dark consciousness in which you're imagining yourself the central figure. Bring something from that realm into your consciousness through the holy names. And the holy names, you can take shelter of them and bring them into your consciousness anytime, any place. No restrictions. It's yours. Take it. Bring Krishna into your consciousness. And as that verse said, and we highlighted a little bit earlier about, and we should meditate upon the Supreme Lord. And if we get a taste for the difference between the empty, dark consciousness that we all inhabit and having Krishna, being Krishna conscious, if we can get a taste of the difference, darkness and light, then we will want to increase the sweetness of being with Krishna until the point where we can't live a moment without being in the presence of Krishna. And then Aniruddha Prabhu had asked a question, is it necessary to take sannyas? What am I going to say? But what's necessary is to... what's the benefit of being a sannyasi is you have no other responsibilities. You can be completely unselfish and see everyone equally. When even if you're in a Brahminical type of situation, you want to be, you can be kind to everyone, but you still have a little special kindness for the member of your family, and you worry about them a little bit more like that. But sannyasis, civilly finished. No social responsibilities whatsoever. So there's, and therefore, because they're respected so much, the sannyasa order is respected so much, and because that's culture, because the sannyasis are respected so much, then when they speak, everyone listens due to that respect because of the austerities, the austere position they've taken. So is it necessary? No, of course it's not necessary. But what is necessary is that we stop being so selfish. That's what's necessary. And see what gifts we have. I mean, I was listening to a lecture this morning, and Prabhupada was talking about the benefits of being born in India, Bharatvarsha. And he was saying, he was contrasting him meeting two persons who were very, very much in high esteem in this world. One, Professor Katofsky, who has been made famous by Prabhupada by being a Russian in Russia many years ago in the USSR, a professor, and Prabhupada, he was speaking to Prabhupada, or Prabhupada was speaking to him, and he asked him what will happen, or Prabhupada asked him, the professor, what will happen when you leave your body? And his reply was, everything is finished. And Prabhupada would say, big professor, doctor of this, doctor of that, and no knowledge. Doesn't know anything. Or what he does know doesn't have any relevance to the real welfare of human society. Not that he doesn't know anything, but he doesn't know the essential principle of becoming happy in this world, of spiritual knowledge, of understanding that this one life is not all that's going to be. And doesn't know that how you live your life now is going to affect how you live your next life. Like the children want to play all the time. They don't necessarily want to go to school. But the parents say you have to go to school because they know how they live this part of their life is going to affect that part of their life. And then the other example that I heard Prabhupada give was Lord Brockway, who he met, or Prabhupada said he came and saw me in London, and he was the Governor General of India while Prabhupada was growing up, and he was elder to Prabhupada, and he was in Calcutta when he was young, and he was in the British House of Lords, a very well-respected person. He was a vegetarian, and Prabhupada asked him what his goal was, and he replied, to die peacefully. I mean, no one dies peacefully, practically speaking. But Prabhupada gave these as examples, these well-educated, well-respected men, and he contrasted those to, he called them cultivators or farmers in India who had no education, and yet, just by the virtue of their birth, they understood that their situation now was a product of their previous birth, that they were eternal souls, and that the law of karma was affecting them, and they should act in a particular way so that they could get good results in the future. Even if they didn't know about Krishna and they weren't great devotees, they had so much more knowledge than the most well-educated people in the world. So that is the glory of a birth in India. It's just natural. It comes along with the birth, the respect for the deities, to respect sadhus. Usually there's always, yesterday it happened, on Sundays it often happens that just some people who don't know, but just by culture, they'll come in the middle of the class and make their way in front of the deities and do some ritual or something like that. Just out of the culture, just by the birth. But now it's time to take it to the next level, so to speak, and bring the compassion to the next level, and the best we can. So, okay, we can say that, when to the best we can. But also at the same time know that there's often something better than the best we can. and we won't lose by being a little better than the best we can, but we'll actually gain really a lot the more we can act on the soul platform. And but that doesn't mean that we should be irresponsible with our family duties or societal duties. We shouldn't be irresponsible, but we should make our life harmonious with the service of Krishna and with compassion. We should make our life as much as we are capable of harmonious with compassion. Okay. Did I answer your question? Okay, I'll end here. I thought this verse and Prabhupada's purport again, these two, were very, very, he was pushing so strongly the importance of even making sacrifices. Because what does sacrifice mean? It means, he said it, giving up something that you may not want to give up, including your own comfort, for the benefit of a higher cause. So the child even sacrifices his tendency. Yes. Yes. Thank you. I was thinking the same thing. I'm not sure what I did, but I'm not going to do it again. I hope. I forgot to read the fine print when I agreed to come into the material world. It said, conditions apply. That was really funny. Did you do that on purpose? Next time I give class, I want you to be there. That was so good. And that's Krishna's mercy, by giving us eternal lives, that we can try again. And remember, something went wrong. That's so funny. And that's actually the message of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about the tree of material existence. And we wander from birth to birth, from one branch of the tree to the next, trying to taste the different varieties of fruit. But this happens forever, practically speaking, because we're not satisfied with whatever fruit that we're tasting right now. So, and we see someone else with something that we imagine is tastier, and that will bring the satisfaction to the real me, to the soul, to the person. So we wander, Brahmanda Brahmate. We move from one part of the universe to the other, chasing what? Our desires. So the art of Krishna consciousness is to decrease the desires on that side, despite the fact that all the advertising, all the education is telling us to consume, and if get this and get 2 of them and 10 of them. There was one man he was actually a great devotee of Srila Prabhupada. But his wealthy person, a Bombay person and Gujarati person, his hobby was collecting Rolls Royces, and he had like 60 Rolls Royces. But only one. It was funny. Now I'll really drift. There was this one gentleman who died a few years ago, that I had heard about 20 years ago, and he lived in Western Australia while we were living in Melbourne. And he had broken away. It was called the Hutt River Province. And he had broken away. He had claimed independence. He had some farmland, and he proclaimed himself an independent country while living in Western Australia. You had heard about him? Did you hear about him?
Yeah, he's ridiculed by most of the
Yeah. But we went and visited him. And when we were going to Kalbari, we visited him, and now he's passed away. And he had a Rolls Royce there that someone had given him. And it looked a little bit old. So I said to him, "Do you ever drive that Rolls Royce? Do you ever drive it?" He looked at me and said, "When you have a Rolls Royce, you never drive it yourself." Anyway, he was a real Aussie bloke, but he was a good guy. You had to like him. Okay, on that note, I mean, how many Rolls Royces would it take to satisfy you? I mean, so the real satisfaction. And what would it take us to be really convinced? What would it take to be really convinced that if we actually loved Krishna, we wouldn't have any other, we would actually have achieved full satisfaction? So after the class is over, you can go and pray to your deities, your beloved Sisi Gornitai, Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Devi, and Sisi Radhaballabha. You can pray for whatever you like. But if you need any advice what to pray for, I'm not going to say what now, because you all know. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the wonderful class. You mentioned here about having the compassion for the living entities, and we see every day so many people suffering. But
Do you go out on book distribution a lot? Yeah. Do you see people suffering?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, because I live in at Gopinath Dham, and I don't go out very much. So sometimes I forget until I'm forced by circumstances to go shopping or something like that, and it's shocking. I'm sorry.
I was wondering, like, when we see so much suffering and it just everywhere, our heart can become a little desensitized because we start to see that as normal, because everyone is going through it, and to some extent, even we ourselves might be going through that. So when the heart becomes so desensitized, it's very hard for compassion to grow in that.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Could you please share, like, how can we actually become compassionate then?
So you said not compassion was desensitized. So one could say callous or hardness of heart. Is that correct? So the opposite, so you're asking in another way, is how to have a soft heart. And I suggest just go in front of Radhaballabha. Because the heart melts so naturally when presented with transcendental beauty and transcendental sweetness. It just naturally softens the heart. A simple answer. What do you think? And you can read about Prabhupada too, that you really feel bad about having a hard heart when you read, or feeling lazy or selfish and everything, because Prabhupada in one sense made it look very easy. I saw him in Fiji in 1976. We were in his room, or in the room of while he was in Fiji, and he sat back on his cushion and he just put his hand like this as he did, and he said, in the beginning, in the early days, 26 Second Avenue, etc., we had nothing, but there was no anxiety. And now we have so much, and there's no anxiety still. But there were other times, he said, he had to struggle so much. Little child in the back who is so happy and playful. I was wondering where you kept your horses. Now I know, they're all upstairs. Other times he said he couldn't sleep at night because the devotees weren't acting responsibly with the money that Krishna had given them. One time I had a photo. I had when I was teaching in the Gurukula, we had a big board of all photos of Prabhupada from Vyasa Puja books, and there was one that was one of my favorites, and Prabhupada was like this, in a very internal mood. It was one of my favorites. And then one time, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj visited, and he was with Prabhupada so much, he was saying, this picture, this happened, and this was what happened in this picture. And when he pointed to that picture, he said that one of his leaders had just left his post, and Prabhupada was like this. So, and he was elderly, traveling, and on and pushing onward and struggling, and there was no help from outside at all except from Krishna. And therefore he appreciated the devotees who were helping him, even though we were so inexperienced and culturally deficient, culturally challenged. That's how you'd say it nowadays. And Krishna consciously, maturity challenged in every way, but we had youthful energy. And Prabhupada appreciated so much because with that energy he could do so much because he wasn't being helped anywhere else. But he struggled. He had to struggle so much. So read about Prabhupada's life. Read the early days, how when he was preaching to people himself, to the Westerners. You've read about when he was in San Francisco? You've read that part? I think it's the third volume of Prabhupada Limamrita, about the crazy people. This is this elderly, cultured Bengali gentleman. And, he's come, and people banging on his door in the middle of the night, and making crazy sounds, intoxicated, people saying, coming and screaming, I am God. And Prabhupada I don't know, he was empowered. Shaktavesh, practically speaking. So if we're starting to feel sorry for ourselves, we can just appreciate Prabhupada more. If we want our heart to be softened, we just stand in front of Radha Ballabha. If we're in a bad mood, we stand in front of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. And Gaunitai. If you want some mercy, just go in front of them. They look so beautiful. The deities look so beautiful. Every day, but today they look so beautiful. They're so well taken care of. Such a wonderful standard. Wonderful standard means day after day after day to do anything, day after day after day after day after day, regardless of what your mind is telling you, to do some service day after day after day after day to a high standard. That takes bhakti. Again, despite what your mind is telling you, because some days your mind is going to tell you, the last thing I feel like doing is doing this. And then when you find, as you said, if you're doing it mechanically, then you can think that I need mercy. So then you pray to Guru, Vaishnavas, Prabhupada, Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu. I can't do this anymore. I don't have the devotion. So in some senses, when we become conscious of our own deficiencies, that's such great mercy. It's required step before praying sincerely for help. Because if we're enamored by our own power, we don't need any help and we don't get any help. So Krishna so kindly gives us so much trouble that of course I'm being silly when I say that, but he kindly lets us know our own deficiencies. I've spoken to many expert book distributors, and they say you go on your own power a lot of the time, and you're thinking, I'm pretty good, I can speak fast, I can say, are you from here or out of town, and get them to stop and things like that. And Krishna gives you results, and then sometimes, and then you feel really, really good, and then sometimes no one will take a book no matter what you do. No one will take a book. and then you have to confront the fact that it's been Krishna who's been kind to you. And then you have to say, I'm here as your servant. If you want to help me and be a little compassionate, that's up to you, because I can't do anything myself. And then we learn that Krishna is really there. Thank you. Any last question? Yes. We'll make this the next to last question.
Hare Krishna. Bhurijana Prabhu, as you said yesterday, whatever little spark of compassion we have got, it must be fanned. The spark of compassion we have got,
yes,
it will be fanned so vigorously that the Krishna conscious movement spreads all over the world. That's my comment. My question is, in previous lives, like Ashwini Kumar is saying, he did cut off the head of the Richi,
yes,
and put a horse's head.
yes.
So that means the medical sciences were so advanced,
yes, surgical operation
at that time. Otherwise, cutting a head and putting another head is so difficult. You have to take out all the blood vessels, tie them up. Esophagus, you have to cut it and anastomose the trachea, and so it's so difficult. So it's only the mystic power only by which we can cut off the head and put another head. And
have you ever tried this, by the way? It sounds like you're very experienced.
So I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion? Is it mystic power or something else?
Yes. No, my opinion is that yes, you need some empowerment to do things like that. Even to be like one of the main differences between Western astrology and Vedic astrology is that if you want to do Vedic astrology, you always need a devata. You need to pray to some deity to empower you and give you the insights to be able to give proper readings. In Western astrology, they just mechanically do it, and you can. Yes, that's one of the differences. So yes, this is also the next to last question.
1 minute.
Well, there was just one other thing. Yes, go ahead. No, you can, Mataji. Yes. So happy to see you both.
And see, I was just thinking about compassion.
Yes.
The compassion, it doesn't develop all of a sudden. But what Srila Prabhupada has given us so many books, like Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam and then Charitamrit. So as you read them more and more, you develop sort of love and attachment with Krishna. And when that love, comes in your heart, then you get detached with the other things, the material things. And then you get more compassion, because you think everybody belongs to Krishna, and everything is Krishna's, he's the proprietor. So what to worry about it, see? So you develop more compassion,
yes,
for the people.
Yes.
You don't differentiate, So they have got the same soul as we have got, So we should help, So as you read more and more books of Srila Prabhupada, he has written it so well, then the compassion comes automatically. That's what I feel.
Thank you. See, Mahatma Prabhu, he likes to hear. Not that Mataji doesn't, but Mataji likes to read and study Prabhupada's books.
Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to ask you a question, which is
Me?
relevant. Yeah.
Okay.
That before, when I was coming in and offering my obeisances, you were in front of the altar, in front of Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi,
Yeah.
and young Shriya was helping you. I had called her over, and then she said, I'm taking care of Mataji now. So when she was taking care of you,
Who?
Where's Shriya? Where's Shriya?
Ah, okay.
Did you, were you thankful and wanted to, bless her?
Yeah.
Okay. That's natural when we offer service. That it's not that Krishna is playing when he shouldn't be playing, and he should be very attentive and sitting with his hands folded like a very good young man and listening to his father. And yes, Prabhu? When he smiles like that, what can you do? Okay, you can do whatever you like, no problem.
Actually, everything is done by him, but we just take the credit.
Yeah. So it's not that Krishna is a cruel master and gets insensitive and hard-hearted like I do and take everything for granted, but he's Bhava Grahi Janardana. In the midst of so many faults, he sees the good that's there. So we should know that no service is unnoticed, and if, yeah. Okay, it's getting late and it's time for prasadam. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Sri Gonatai ki
Jai.
Sri Radha Vallabha ki Jai. Sri Jagannath Baladev Sri Bhadra Devi ki Jai.
Bhurijana Prabhu ki Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Don't break the floor, please. Would you? Just gently.